Hey everyone, Billboard Chris here at my home in Canada, and I'm going to read you an email I received 2 days ago from another father in Canada who is trying to protect his child, his young boy, from a lifetime of medical harm. He's trying to protect him from child transition because the mother is telling this little boy that he's a girl. Now, I'm leaving out all identifying information because this is a situation currently before the courts. Hi, Chris. I'm a father in Canada, currently representing myself in the Supreme Court. I wanted to reach out because my case is unfolding right here in our backyard, and it shows how deep the ideological capture has gone. On July 16th, an arbitrator issued an award directing that my 8-year-old son be assessed for gender dysphoria by the head of one of our prominent gender clinics. The arbitrator treated WPATH guidelines as if they were law, referred to my son by a different name, and ignored the evidence I filed, including an affidavit where my son said, "Mommy said I'm trans." The boy doesn't even know what trans means. He's 8. For the past 2 years, my ex has been feeding him trans information without my knowledge. The school also began socially transitioning him in secret, effectively becoming the emotional and psychological caretakers of this identity. The arbitrator swept all of this aside, ruling as if affirmation was the only path. I should add that this father has 50% custody, and the school hid from him that they were now treating his boy as if he were a girl and using a girl's name and pronouns. I had one call with the chosen psychologist. I didn't even get to ask all of my questions, but what shocked me is that puberty blockers were already discussed and tabled, despite this clinician never having met my son. This shows the conveyor belt in action. Assessment, affirmation, and medicalization are treated as foregone conclusions. I'm now applying to have the award set aside. My only aim is to protect my son from being railroaded down this path. The arbitrator did find there was no family violence in my not affirming him, but everything else points toward ideological capture. It's a lonely road. Most people seem to be walking around with moral blinders on. But I followed your work, and I wanted to let you know about this case because it's happening right here. I look up to your courage and consistency. You've been one of the few willing to speak the truth. If you'd like to connect, I'd welcome it. Yes, I would like to connect, and I have connected. I spoke with him for about half an hour yesterday, but I've gotten in touch with some lawyers, and we're going to try to help him because this cannot continue. I want to address a couple things in here. A couple myths. So, first of all, the arbitrator treated WPATH guidelines as if they were law. Yes, this is what they all do. What is WPATH? It's the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. It is nothing but a radical activist organization, an organization which totally ignores every systematic review that has been done, looking at all of the scientific literature, all of the peer-reviewed reports. These have been done in Sweden, then England, then the HHS in the United States recently conducted one, and they all come to the same inescapable conclusion. There is no evidence to support transitioning kids. And you compare that to, of course, the great harm that is being done. This boy is 8 years old. They're already discussing putting him on puberty blockers. Now, they won't do that until a little later on. It depends when he hits puberty. But the scientific term for this is Tanner stage 2. That's when they will start him on these. And we know, and this isn't speculation, these same WPATH doctors privately admit in video and in writing, and we have all of this because early last year in 2024, this was all leaked. It's what's called the WPATH files, and you'll find these on my nonprofit's website, WeSpeakTruth.com. But they admit that when you start children on puberty blockers at 10 or stage 2, and then you progress to the cross-sex hormones, these children are sterilized. Guess what I learned yesterday in my half-hour conversation with this father? This boy, this little beautiful boy, wants to have a big family one day. Good for him. Right now, as an 8-year-old, he wants to have 10 kids one day. I used to want that too. In fact, I still do. I wish I had more. Because family is what life is all about. But as things currently stand, on the path that he's being sent down, he will never be able to have kids. Because when you start puberty blockers at 10 or stage 2 and you progress to these cross-sex hormones, you are infertile for life. Daniel Metzger, the endocrinologist at the BC Children's Hospital, admits in the WPATH files that children cannot consent to puberty blockers because, as just one example, when you ask them about having a family, when you ask them about preserving fertility, if they can even do that, they usually can't when they start them young, it's like talking to a blank wall. That's what he says. Another doctor says, as soon as you bring up this subject, they go, ooh, babies, gross. Of course they do. They're little kids themselves. You can't have an intelligent conversation about this with a 10-year-old. They have no idea what they're signing up for. The president of WPATH, Marcy Bowers, of course a man identifying or pretending to be a woman, he admits on a Zoom call and in writing in the WPATH files, he admits that literally none of these boys who started on puberty blockers at 10 or stage 2 have ever been able to have an orgasm as an adult. They are destroying the future sexual function of children who, of course, don't even know what that means. He goes on to say in this video, well, I've tweeted it many times, he goes on to say, you know, intimacy is important in relationships. Yeah, do you think? So what do we do as he starts spitballing? Do we let a little bit of puberty happen and then put them on the puberty blockers? Do we take them off for a while so that some puberty can occur? These doctors are all just spitballing about the greatest child abuse scandal in the history of modern medicine. They have no idea what they're doing because this has never been done in the history of the human race. There has never been a single clinical trial looking into this. And one thing the Cass Review out of England said, one of their conclusions was that they want to conduct a clinical trial. Well, guess what? You can't do that ethically either. And it's not needed. We have more than enough evidence. We have more than enough studies. But there is no such thing as a child born in the wrong body. Puberty is not a medical condition. We know from these reviews, from Gender Clinic's own statistics, like the Tavistock in England, which when it closed down had a waiting list of more than 15,000 children, by the way, we know that 70% of those kids had 5 or more coexisting mental health comorbidities. They didn't have one problem. They didn't have 2 or 3 or 4. They had 5 or more. The vast majority of them. Most have autism. According to the Tavistock, 35% had moderate to severe autism. That does not include the mild cases. I am friends with a law firm based out of Texas where they're suing for these detransitioners, these young people who've been harmed. They're looking at another 150 cases. Last time I spoke with them, which was just a couple months ago. And in virtually every case, the child was on the autism spectrum. Sexual abuse is prevalent in a majority of these cases. The former president of the American College of Pediatricians, Dr. Quentin Van Meter, estimates about 60% of these kids have had sexual abuse. An earlier study showed 52% of the mothers of the boys themselves had borderline personality disorder. 52%, compared to just 6% in the general population. Well, how can that be if trans is something that's innate? if it's something you're born with? Well, obviously it can't be, because this whole thing is made up. There's no such thing as a transgender child. What is it that makes a child trans? If you listen to one of the doctors at Boston Children's Hospital, which was the #1 ranked pediatric hospital in the country, she says that children know seemingly from the womb they are transgender. Dr. Jeremy Carswell, who runs the gender multi-specialty clinic at Boston Children's, says it is things like a little girl trying to pee standing up, a little boy trying to pee sitting down, trying on a sibling's clothing, and playing with the opposite gender toys. These are all a sign that your child is transgender and can be treated. And they see kids starting at 3 years old. They socially transition them, just as this school is doing to this man's boy, with a new name and pronouns. They solidify this abusive notion of being born in the wrong body in a child, because everyone around him is affirming this. What chance does a child have of pulling out of that? None is the answer. This is a cult, the world's largest cult, teaching children that they were born wrong and that they need a pharmaceutical company to help them be their true selves, that they need a surgeon's knife to be their true selves. I say all the time, whether you believe in God or not, this ideology makes exactly 0 sense. Because if you believe in God, gender ideology is teaching that God made mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. If you're an atheist or whatever, if you believe in evolution, great. You can believe in both as well. But if you believe in evolution, this ideology is teaching that somehow 1 billion years of the process of natural selection has failed, and we need AbbVie pharmaceuticals to help your child be their true self. Thank you, pharmaceutical companies. You've come to save us. All these children were born wrong. Is it just humans that are born wrong? What about dogs and cats and deer? Are they also transgender? If we did to dogs what we are doing to children, the left would be up in arms. They'd be protesting in the thousands in the streets. And these same leftists who say stereotypes are bad are now saying, oh, well, this child doesn't conform to stereotypes. Let's cut their body parts off. Totally insane. It's child abuse. We have to stop it. Movements don't succeed when we just complain or are negative all the time. So when talking about this, it's important to stress the positive and truthful message. The one that everyone can get behind, which is that children are beautiful just as they are. No drugs or scalpels needed. That there's no right or wrong way to be a girl or a boy. A girl who wants to climb trees and play in the dirt and throw around a football. A girl who likes boy toys and boy sports and boy clothes is a beautiful girl. And a boy like this young boy, who does seem to be on the autism spectrum, who does have some other issues going on, a boy who is very sensitive, well, he's a boy. And the last thing he needs is to be maimed and sterilized for life. But every single aspect of Canadian society is now rigged against the sane father who wants to protect his kid. And they support this abusive mother, a mother who just wants to turn her little boy into a girl. So we have a lot of work to do. We have to educate the entire world. I believe we can put a stop and will put a stop to this child abuse, this pediatric medical transition sooner than later. But the only question is how many kids are going to be harmed before we do. So I need your help. Honestly, just help anyone you want who is in this fight, because this is all I do. I quit my job 5 years ago, but there are lots of other people like that too. There are lots of great groups. I started a nonprofit in the United States. You can support that. Go to WeSpeakTruth.com. please speak up about this. Because we have the truth on our side, and the truth spreads for free, and it is spreading, but we need to spread it more quickly, and we need to fight back. So hopefully I can get this man some lawyers in time, and we can postpone this madness, because as soon as he goes to the gender clinic, we already know what's going to happen. They're just going to affirm that he's really a girl. And it's going to make it more and more difficult for him to stop going down this path, and everything that dad does to save him will be rejected, because that's the Canadian system right now. So thank you very much for listening. Please spread this news. People don't believe this stuff is happening, but it's all out there. We have all the evidence in the world that we need. We have testimonies like this father's. Thank you so much.